I would like to pick up the slide from Bassem, because I think would be interesting to ask the other panelists how they see their NetApps in the taxonomy that you presented.
Maybe I can start.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So I fully agree with that categorization. We need to understand that there are several roles in this market, in this ecosystem. So it's interesting to see that basically we can have the perspective of the network operators, for example, that are more oriented to managing the NetApps in their own environment, of course, with some guarantees, in the sense that in this sense, it will be fundamental to have some sort of, check and also certification, as also proposed by 5GASP, for the quality of the NetApps that at the end are basically executed in their own environment, right? Then there are other actors that would like to see the network more as a sort of black box. For example, if we consider the Industry 4.0 areas, that they also could, instantiate some standalone non-public networks in their own premises, especially for the biggest industries. But at the same time, they need to have a very simple approach towards their management, and the control of the vertical applications in this sense is more following the usual software-oriented approach. So in this case, the model will be more suitable, with vertical applications that are running on top of the network, that basically interact with the network itself through a simplified version of the APIs that, for example, the 5G core exposes, and so on. And the other point is also the kind of services that the network could expose, which kind of flexibility and also security it is provided in this sense. For example, it's very interesting also the NetApps related to the traffic management and so on, where actually the services for the localization are becoming crucial in this sense, right?
Andre.
I don't know if this will answer the question, but from a startup point of view, and other companies and small companies that don't have the experience of 5G, I believe that there is a need of a platform that makes an abstraction of all the technical aspects of 5G, and should give them the opportunity to deploy their app without that many things they need to know. 5GASP does this. So the issues for a startup that doesn't have any experience with 5G will be to connect and make some agreements with network operators in order to deploy their application on the edge, for example. And on the other side, most of these startups are companies of software engineers, like developers that only they write code basically. So they don't have much knowledge about the deployment and the ops part of an app or a NetApp. I don't know if this answers my questions, but please.
Thank you for your contribution. Before I give the mic to Cyprian, please leave your questions in the chat, okay? So we can also have your contributions to the discussion. But go ahead, Cyprian.
Yeah, so related to, let's say, our technology and use cases, I would say that, there are different phases. So if we look at the safety use case, of course, it is very important to ensure the minimum latency in this sort of application. So from this point of view, it is very important to have the best the architectural option. On the other hand, yeah, this is one phase. The other phase is if we choose to host our application in the Mac, and so that means that we need to upload a lot of images, so a lot of data. So from that point, yeah, the throughput is really more relevant, and yeah, that can be applied for our other use case that is related rather to traffic optimization, traffic flow optimization, than related to safety.
Thank you, Cyprian. Bassem, would you like to say something about the feedback from our other panelists?
Yes, one comment. I mean, for the edge, since I am hearing a lot about the Make the Edge, one of the issue. So, if you want to reduce the latency, so you will have to associate this what we call the UPF, so the data plane of the core in the edge. So all the application will be run, I mean, behind this UPF, but the edge node is not accessible to a vertical. I mean, until now, you don't have any API to, I mean, to say, look, this is my application and I want to deploy it in the edge. You have, I mean, the vertical only express the intent. I want this, but the instantiation itself of the instance of the application is until now is under, I mean, in the hand of the operator. So this is one of, I mean, the challenge how you can open the edge to the vertical. This is not, I mean, not straightforward. I mean, since everything should go via the core, and the core is something running usually in the central node. So how you do this? Yeah, this is another story and another problem behind this NetApp. So for that reason, I believe that the exposure, I mean, of the trend that I'm observing from the run, I mean, to be more open run via the RIC and so on, this could be, I mean, could address this shortcoming now. If you don't have this openness in the run, I mean, you, yeah, the vertical always should give the function to the operator, and it's up to the operator to associate it in the right place.
I think there's, just let me also contribute a little bit to the panel, but there's ETSI MEC workgroup is doing especially good work there, addressing some of these aspects. We are also looking into that in Fivecast, and we see that there is some work being done towards exposing that capability, because we see from both our partners and from the community in general, one of the most interesting aspects is the capability to deploy at the edge. And this is something that we, as a community of researching, need to address in the near future. I would now pose a different question, which is from the viewpoint of software developers, and we're targeting today in this webinar software developers. What are the biggest difficulties that you faced? I did this question before today to Rudolf. What are the main difficulties you see in developing applications for 5G networks? Because we have all these tool sets for developing internet applications. We have lots of software that help us building internet applications, but not so much for telecom. Okay, so give me your feedback, how you develop applications in your companies. Maybe we could go ahead with each other.
Yes, well, in my view, the most difficult thing is to really make the best of the 5G network, because we are all used to implement applications thinking about the cloud, right? So what the capabilities of the cloud are. On the other hand, the 5G network provides key differentiators in this sense. The usage of the edge is one particular case. That's true that right now it's very difficult to find infrastructure that are ready to support this capability, and the API are not really available, at least for the part related to the specific deployment of the NetApps components in the edge infrastructure. But at the same time, there are possibilities, for example, to configure the network slices, basically to request a maximum latency or something like that. And then, of course, it will be up to the operator somehow to decide the best placement for the various NetApps components, virtual components, so behind the local UPFs, for example. But that's important to understand that the 5G network basically provides capabilities that are beyond what we had with the cloud. So there are much more possibilities, for example, in distributing the applications and the components of the application. For example, for the smart factory, where we have the IoT devices and the IoT platforms, the IoT gateways, and then we have the part of the reasoning of the application, the logic that usually are placed or very locally or then immediately at the cloud level, right? With 5G network, we can think also about different kind of distribution. So for example, the part related to the IoT gateway may move to the edge or to the extreme edge, depending on the scenarios, and the related performance could be very different in this sense. So understanding which are the capabilities and the performances that we can reach with the different deployment models of the applications when basically using a real environment, this is quite critical. And since at the moment we don't have a lot of experimental environments for that, and it's also difficult to replicate them in our labs, let's say, because of course, I mean, well, maybe in our case it will be easier because we are also involved in the 5G research. But for a simple software developer company without a lot of expertise in 5G network and so on, they cannot replicate a 5G network, a real 5G network, or a realistic one at least in their lab, right? So it's very complex to test them. That's where I also think that the platform from the ICT 41 project, or in general the old ICT 17, could really help to bridge this gap.
Thank you, Chada. Andre.
From a startup's point of view, I mean, deploying is one of like the hard parts of the equation. Software developers write code, write tests, they committed to Git, and then they expect everything to be deployed just like that. In Neobility and in the workplace environment, people usually call me Andy. And usually when we need to deploy a new microservice or deploy something, usually this happens. Andy, can you deploy this, or can you help us deploy this part of the code? So what I'm basically saying is, there is a need for like managed services in order for developers to write the code, write the tests, and then continuous integration and continuous deployment pipeline should be like set as more managed as possible. I mean, for example, in Neobility for deploying things in our cloud, for example, we use a lot of managed services from AWS, and we like use various scripts or even manual work in order to create the continuous integration and continuous deployment pipelines. But what I'm trying to say is like there is a need for services. I mean, especially nowadays, there is a need of having a way to like deploy the code you write as fast as possible. And you can like take an example, like a service built for software engineers is like Heroku, for example. You just write the code and you just push it. And they even have their own like Git repo. I mean, you push the app, you don't even know that you push it to a Git repo behind the scenes, and the app just deploys. They automatically detect what kind of app it is. They automatically containerize it and automatically deploys it. You just like need to write the code and push it.
I think that you pointed something very important, which is the need for new skills and new knowledge from startup developers, usually coming out of university right now. And I would take this as a lead to move the question to Cyprian, which is also part of his job description, to have a liaison between academia and industry. So what is academia doing to fill in this gap? Because increasingly, we have a broader set of knowledge necessary to work on top of 5G, and we need to shorten and to have new engineers with this knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, in our group, our group is a collaboration in between telecommunication engineers and computer science engineers. So this is, let's say, really an advantage, and we felt it also in our case that there is the need for such, let's say, collaboration because, the software developer or the software professional typically doesn't have this knowledge and doesn't know the capabilities and what can really can be done. On the other hand, from the telecom, the skills in software are not that not always that developed. So this should come somehow together. So overall, I completely agree with what you just said. I think the most important part is the architecture and design, where you need to understand both sides. So what the 5G is capable of, and what it can be done from the software perspective.
Thank you, Cyprian. I would like to do a final question, but I don't see any questions in the chat. The chat has been open for all the session, but I would like to make a final question, which is the amount of tools and technologies that we have been using for 5G actually been around for some time for internet giants, and actually people build things mostly based on the skill sets they learned from internet technologies. Let's call it this way. So from cloud technologies mostly. What are we doing in the telecommunication area to be at the same level as this industry? Are we falling behind? Maybe I start with Bassem.
I think, yes, no, our partner growth, this disruption that I call the disruption comes from web scale. And one of the topics that we already identified at the beginning of 5GPP, that most of the design of the telco world is designed by Itzimanu. And at that time, there's big disruption comes from the web scale, which is the container, Docker, and Kubernetes. And if you look now, Kubernetes is not a standard and becomes the standard de facto is an industry one. So this disruption we call the cloud native. And now this cloud native design should be part of the network. For that reason, personally, I believe that the 6G will be the first really end-to-end real cloud native system. We started in the core now in release 15, 16. So we have this service-based architecture in the core. But this trend, I'm observing that will be more and more, spanning all the segment of the network, the optical one, and even the RAN. And at the end, we'll end up with a system where we have APIs everywhere. And even there's now strong consortium between the web scaler and the telco world to harmonize this API. And if we do that, so from software developer, it becomes easy for him, to push a code on Amazon or on an operator portal is the same. So I think we are taking this same objective, but it takes time, since when we speak about the cloud native, behind is the very way how you design the system. And when you design the system, how you design the code for example, for the RAN. And this comes to, an organizational problem in the companies and so on. So, the cloud native is not only a term, but it impacts the way, even the vendor will build the code. So a lot of impact. But I think we are following the same line to harmonize these views between the telco world and the web scale. If we don't do that, I will lose the game. This is my personal opinion.
Thank you, Bassem, for sharing your opinion. We're running in a tight schedule now, and we're almost finishing. I would just leave the mic open for any of you to make a final statement. Else we give word to Roman for a final presentation of the 5GASP NetApp community, which is basically something that we are building in 5GASP, which is a user community and developer community, so of a place to share knowledge. And I think during this discussion, everyone mentioned this, the need to share knowledge and to upscale the know-how of our developers. And we are trying to do that through an open community, a practice community that can be used to level up the skills in developers working in 5G.